Alright, so in this video I'm going to cover the striker stats as best of my abilities and capabilities and what I know of. If I'm wrong about anything, please let me know in the comments down below because I'm just going based off of what I think and what I experience, I guess. Alright, so I'll cover HP last, but energy, you have max energy, which is the maximum amount of energy your striker has. You have energy regen ground, which is the regen rate of your energy pool when you're on the ground, and energy regen air, which is the regen rate of your energy while you're in the air. Note that in order to get the air regen, you have to not be boosting or using or consuming energy. Energy reactivation threshold depleted. This is a energy reactivation threshold depleted. When you deplete your energy bar flashes red and becomes depleted, and you can't activate evades or boosts while depleted. After a depletion cooldown of X seconds, your energy will regen at the depleted rate, which is a percentage based on the regen, whether you're on the air or the ground at that rate. When the gray energy bar recharges and hits the reactivation threshold, which is a red line, then it will regen normally. For fluid armor, your fluid armor max capacity is the maximum amount of fluid armor you have. Fluid armor regen is set at a value. Note that you will always be constantly regenning fluid armor until it cracks and then hits 0. At which point, if it hits 0, it's depleted, and then it waits the fluid armor depletion cooldown time, and then it starts regenerating at the fluid armor depletion rate, regen rate, which is, for most strikers that I'm aware of, 100%, so it's the regular fluid armor regen. During the time that your fluid armor is depleted, it's dark gray, and you won't receive any benefits of fluid armor or damage mitigation from fluid armor. So the fluid armor will regenerate regardless of the damage that you take in the background, but the moment that it goes above the fluid armor reactivation threshold, it will start effectively working again, and then the enemy will have to take out your fluid armor if they have the damage type that applies to fluid armor. Just as an extra side note, if the fluid armor is depleted, it will flash red, and then you will have to hit that cooldown before it starts regenning. And then it regens, and then it doesn't apply the damage resistance or damage mitigation of fluid armor until it hits that threshold, which is that red line. Ideally, don't get your fluid armor cracked. It's better to have it than not. Mobility. So, ground speed is the speed of your striker moving normally on the ground. Evade speed, ground, is how much a shift or a initial boost in evade is in terms of speed. Evade energy ground is how much that evade costs in energy. The boost speed ground is when you're holding shift. You get this speed, which is less than your evade speed, and boost energy ground is how much energy it takes to maintain that boost. Boost activation time ground is the amount of time that when you tap shift you get the evade speed bonus, and then it lingers for that amount of time, and then it activates boost. Your jump energy ground is how much energy it takes to jump. Airspeed is the speed while you're in the air moving around. This mainly affects flyers, so that's very important to note. Evade speed air, this is how fast you evade in the air. Evade energy air is how much energy it takes to evade in the air. Boost speed air is holding shift in the air and boosting, mainly for lateral movement. Boost energy air is the amount of energy it takes to sustain a boost in the air. Boost time air is the amount of time that when you press the evade, it will give you the evade speed air until it hits the boost time air, which then gives you the boost speed air. Jumps energy air, it's the energy it takes to jump. Ascend speed is ascend speed is the speed at which you ascend. Ascend energy is the energy it takes to ascend. And then boost activation time ascent is the amount of time that you get the evade airspeed going up until it goes into the ascend speed. So if you jump up, you jump really fast, and then after this amount of time you go to the ascend airspeed, which is a lot slower. turn speed is how fast your striker can turn on a dime, and then turn speed boost is how fast your striker can turn on a dime while boosting, so it's obviously slower here. Inertia, momentum, physics, jazz. Fire control system. Lock-on range is the maximum range that you'll lock on. Reticle size is the size of your reticle. Lock-on time is the time it takes for you to lock on. Lock-on reset delay obstructed is the time that you maintain lock-on when something that you're locked on to hides behind cover and is obstructed. Now, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I also think that if you shoot behind or through a wall and their outline turns red, that this is the same amount of time that the outline stays red. So I imagine if you're like a Serenith using your radar to target someone behind a wall, that they stay red for this amount of time. Now this is just my guess, I don't actually truly know. Lock-on reset delay out of range. This is when you have a target that goes beyond your lock-on range and you have a lock on them. If they go beyond that range, this is the amount of time that you'll maintain that lock-on reset delay out of range. So if they go out of that, if you have 0 seconds here, then the moment that they hit 410 meters for this example, you lose lock-on. Lock-on reset delay evaded. To my knowledge, this is when the enemy evades and how much you can sustain a lock-on while they're evading. Now, from my test, this does not affect when a specific ability has evasion immunity, like Falcon's loops or Spiral Descent or Sky Raiders evade, or Aquila when it's using its booster kit. From my experience, this does not affect lock-on immunity abilities. And then here we have stability, rebalance, delay, hit, 100%, rebalance, delay, landing, 100%. I believe hit is when you get staggered, and that's the percent recovery rate. So if it's like a 1 second stagger, it takes 1 second. If this was a higher percentage, I believe it would be a lot quicker for you to recover. Landing includes falling and fast falling. So when you are from a high height and you fall into the ground, you will recover. It will say destabilize or you're not stable, and it'll say stabilizing, and then you'll be able to move normally. If you fast fall, this also affects your ability to stabilize. Now, the question I have, which I haven't answered myself, is does this affect melee down slams? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that, but that is a question I have. Now, if we switch our strikers to something that's more melee oriented, we can see different stats. Alright, whatever, it's not the point. So for melee strikers, you'll have boost attack initial energy, which is the amount of time the amount of energy it requires to initiate a melee boost attack. And the boost attack sustained energy is the amount of energy it takes to sustain it per second. So it takes more energy to start up a melee boost attack, and then to sustain it per second while you're boosting in the air, this is how much energy it takes per second. Boost attack turn speed is the turn speed at which, when you're boosting and using a melee boost attack, it's the turn speed that you have or you get. And of course, there's a different energy depending on the different tiers of or combos that you're doing. And that's for melee. I can look at another melee one just to double check. Yeah, boost attack initial energy, sustained energy, turn speed, and then it has different various energy uses depending on the combo, the second combo, third combo, and it's different for air and land, so that's something to note. And it doesn't say what it is for a downward slam, so that is a question I have in the back burner. Stability. So for melees, there's more stability stats. There's a melee attack delay and melee rebalance delay, and then a rebalance delay blocked. Rebalance delay blocked, from my knowledge, affects when you're blocking with your shield and parrying. Melee attack delay and melee rebalance delay, there's mods for this, and a lot of people have tried to figure out which one does which. I personally haven't done the testing, and I personally don't know which one is which. So these affect your melee attack speed, to my knowledge. One of them does. And then one of them affects your clash, when you melee clash with another melee. Now, I don't know which one is which, and I haven't tested it myself, and I've heard other people tested it and they tell me different things. So I'm not sure. I will say that the mods for melee attack delay and melee rebalance delay are really minor, so I don't think they're really worth it. That's just my opinion though. I will go to a sniper so we can see some sniper stats. So for the fire control system, you have a lock-on range for your regular hip fire, but you also have a separate lock-on range for sniper scope. You have reticle size and reticle size for your sniper scope, so when you're zoomed in, you have a different lock-on range and different reticle size. Your lock-on time is the time it takes to lock on. Your static lock-on time, from my perspective and knowledge and from my test, is when the target is either static, not moving, or moving, dynamic. So if they're a stationary target, this is the lock-on time. If they're evading and moving and doing a whole bunch of jazz, this is the lock-on time while you're scoped in and your sniper. That is from my test and my experience. And of course, you do have different lock-on reset delays for when you're hip firing or when you're zoomed in. There is an accuracy adjustment stat, but that's always set to 0 from my knowledge and understanding. There are also adaptability modifiers that affect strikers depending on the map that you're on. Aquatic adaptability will affect you if you're in the water, like in Poseidon Armory. Lunar adaptability will affect you if you're in a space map, like Vigil Imbrium. And space adaptability will affect you if you're in outer space. However, I don't know if there's an outer space map. So to my knowledge, I don't think that's in play to my knowledge. Maybe that's a teaser of things to come. Maybe there's going to be an outer space map and giant space battles, kind of like in the Jeanette Ace Pilot cinematic. But that's my guess. I will check out Stego just for a quick reference of some stuff. Yeah, so I guess Stego doesn't mention his turret form lock-on range increase. That's okay, I guess. I was just checking that. Because, what do you call it? His turret form does increase lock-on range to 700 meters and lock-on range boost of 200 meters. It's also to note that Falcon also has similar capabilities with Falcon's radar, so that's also like a side thing to note. As like a pro tip or whatever you want to call it, a lot of people who play Falcon usually open up their recon kit to get the extra detection boost and lock-on range boost of 100 meters. And then this prevents the invis target, specifically a Norn, from going invis and breaking lock because you have your recon kit already available. This is a great way to maximize the use of missiles and then to ambush a Norn and then to go in close with ballistics and to finish them off. Alright, I think I covered the chunk of what I wanted to cover. And then I'll go into the damage stats. I do want to cover like some minor things like Stego's Jamming Haze Diffuser. Of course it interferes target lock, and you know, a Falcon recon kit can recon and radar, and including Serenith can also see Stego while he's in the smoke. But it increases armor regen by 300% and it reduces energy damage by 40%. This is really important if you're playing Stego, because that means that you can effectively tank a full charged Serenith orbital using Stego smoke. Not saying that you should, not saying it's recommended, just something that to note that this is very important. And other strikers have like all sorts of other abilities that are very niche and fine-tuned that can help you make the difference when you're playing. So I'll end this part of the recording and then go over some of the stats on a board-ish. So I'm just going to read off my notes here. The defensive stats of a striker is not additive. It's multiplicative with a flat 30% resistance applied to both fluid armor and HP, or semantically, structurally speaking, you could say that it's a flat 30% applied to the entire striker. Welkin deals 6,090 damage against Stego with a downward slash attack. To get this number, the formula is actually x equals a times 1 minus 0.3 times 1 minus b. X is the damage dealt, A is damage of attack, and B is target striker's damage resistance type. So in the case of this scenario, Welk's attack deals 60-90 to Stego. The downward slash deals 15k, and Stego has a physical resist of 42%. So if we do some math here, plug and chug, we'll get 60-90. Note that fluid armor and HP both have a base damage resistance of 30%. One could argue that the striker has a flat 30% damage resistance not tied to fluid armor or HP, but that's semantics. HP has an additional multiplicative damage resistance based on striker defensive stats. So the striker resistance applies to their HP. Striker's defensive stats apply for the damage type, and it's multiplicative to the existing 30% damage reduction towards HP, as mathed above. So there are two types of energy damage. There's piercing and non-piercing. Non-piercing energy damage will affect the fluid armor first. When damage is exceeded on the fluid armor and or the fluid armor is removed, then HP damage is applied. Factor in the striker's damage resistance for HP as mentioned before. For piercing energy damage, if there's fluid armor, then 70% goes to the fluid armor and 30% of the damage goes to HP. If the damage to fluid armor exceeds the fluid armor available, the excess is applied to health at some math that I didn't bother to calculate at all. So just know that if you deal more damage via piercing energy damage than they have fluid armor, then that excess damage does go to HP. So fluid armor takes piercing damage at a multiplicative reduction of 30% and 30% again, and that's just basic math. Here's some math. So there's one factor of 0.7 for the base 30% damage resistance, and then another factor of 0.7 for the split and penetration damage. 70% of it goes to fluid armor, and then 30% of it goes to HP, so that 0.7 is for the split and penetration damage. I tested this with Narukami on a Tricera with a instant quickscope of 14k damage. Only 6860 damage is applied to the fluid armor, which is, as the math leads you to believe, is 14,000 times 0.7 times 0.7. You could simplify it and say that 49% of energy piercing damage is applied to fluid armor when it hits the fluid armor, which is about half of the total damage. So for the direct health damage with the piercing energy damage, since piercing also applies to HP, in this test, note Tricera has an energy defensive stat of 31%. So when there is fluid armor, the damage is 14,000 times 0.7 times the energy defensive resistance stat of 31%, which is 6.69% of that, which is 6762. And then you have to multiply that again by 30%, which is the number that it gives you for the split in the piercing energy damage. So 30% of 6762 is 2028. When there is no fluid armor, the damage is applied to HP using the old formula. For whatever reason, the number displays 6761, so the math is off by a small negligible factor of like 1. The TLDR is piercing energy damage is split, 70% of damage is applied to fluid armor and 30% is applied to HP. Then the damage to the fluid armor has its resistances and damage mitigation applied, and then the damage to HP has its own separate resistance and damage mitigation applied, including the striker's damage resistance. Note, if the damage to the fluid armor exceeds the amount of fluid armor available, the excess is applied to HP proportional to some math that I didn't bother to calculate. Essentially, if you deal excess damage to fluid armor beyond what's available, then it goes to the HP at some proportional rate. So I did a lot of tests with wall banging with using Narukami, Aquila, and Inferno. The long story short is you do about 40% damage when you're shooting through walls. This doesn't test shooting through multiple walls, which I imagine there would be more of a damage drop-off. It's better than no damage, but not better than not shooting through walls, so try shooting your target not through walls. So gauge your ammo pool, aim, and hit chance to determine if it's worth it. It's greater for psychological pressure because the chances of someone standing still after getting shot through a wall is low, so apply pressure to them to make them move, which may be a lot of utility, especially if they're on, say, a payload. And then here is my math and stuff for Narukami. And then here is my math and stuff for Inferno. And then here is my math and stuff for Aquila. You can pause at any moment just to read all this jazz. Cool, thanks. This is a further note. Note that the shields for some strikers have different damage mitigation, so in this column, full means that the shield takes full damage and there's no damage scaling or damage mitigation. Scaled means the shield takes damage scaled based on the damage type and resistances. In the left side column is for the handheld shields, right side for the body shields. Handheld shield is the shield held on hand to block, you know, like Panther's shield or Alisna's shield. Body shields are like Tricera's turret form, Panther's complex shield, and Hurricane's bubble shield. Credit to Tom for this information and this testing. Credit to Gallant 3200 for a lot of this testing as well for the mods. I want to add a note that mods do affect gliders, so the ideal use of mods is to use them to enhance your gliders in covert ops. And the other use is to further enhance trolling in casual. That's my personal preference and opinion. Due to the nature of execution and risk of losing mods, it is unrecommended to bring mods in Mashmac unless you can safely perform well with your mods or replenish your mods, like if you have a whole bunch of mod boxes in your inventory for some reason and collect them like a weirdo like I do. Yeah, it's up to you, really. And then for credits, all of this info is stolen and reappropriated from Gallant 3200, Nemesis Systemic, Millennium, and Tom, and Kalmia from Asia or APAC, with further testing. If any of this is wrong, then blame me and not any of them, because I just like put this together and it's based off of my knowledge. And also post your own proof. This is data as of season 3, so please feel free to ask any questions in the comments or even argue in the comments. Anything works, really. Do what you want. Live a good life. Injecting hopium particles.